Welcome to the Scandinavian Mind podcast, our weekly show about how technology is changing the creative industries. Today on the program, Italian tradition versus German innovation. We take a look at the fashion week that just took place in Florence, Italy and Berlin. In this episode, we'll talk about the Nordic brands making a mark in Florence, the tech focus during Berlin Fashion Week, how AR and VR can be a tool for upcycling, what we learned from the German company Yoona Fashion Tech Conference, and how fashion activists took over Berlin Fashion Week and fooled Adidas. I'm Konrad Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind, and I'm here with our dear colleagues Erik, Sedin, and our man on the ground, our contributing editor Dahle. Oliver, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, I'm calling in from Berlin, in which Berlin Fashion Week is very much in full swing at the moment. So a lot of fun.
Are you going on like a tour now, a Fashion Week tour for the next couple of weeks?
Not a tour. I have colleagues here in Berlin, which is very much more on the tour, which is now going to Paris after this. But for me, I'll have a break now for a couple of days, and then I'm going to Copenhagen in the beginning of February.
We'll meet up there in Copenhagen. But we're so happy to have you on the ground reporting on some of the things that are happening. Obviously, Florence was last week. These are, just to begin with, just an overall reflection on these two events. It feels like they have two very different vibes to them. From what I've heard from Florence last week, it was kind of back in full swing. Everyone enjoying the piazza at the Fortezza da Basso. A lot of the halls are open again after kind of the downtime in Florence. What are some of the just overall impressions from Florence and Berlin and the differences between them, Oliver?
Well, so if we start with Florence and Pitti Uomo, as you said, it very much was that this time everyone was back. Buyers from Asia, people from the States, all the halls were open again. So it very much felt like pre-pandemic times, and it had become this huge trade show again. Yeah,
They obviously don't have the same sort of future focus as Berlin. It feels like, from what people told me, Florence is kind of back even in pre-pandemic themes. There's not much talk about sustainability and innovation and new technologies and that sort of thing.
it's not. That's correct. But but it has its function. It's a meeting place for all the brands coming together. It's the start of the fashion month season for men's. So, and everyone is like coming there, meeting each other, and as I said, now like everyone coming back. It's very nice. They have their small little sustainability section in which
Right.
they have curated sustainable up and coming brands, which is, to be honest, very good. And obviously all brands in some sense is talking about sustainability in one way or another, but the fair in general doesn't have this like innovative, progressive feeling to it.
This is in stark contrast to Berlin, which I haven't really focused that much on Berlin the past few years. It feels like it has had its kind of downtime. But now they're back, and we received a lot of press releases ahead of the week, and it feels like at least every other one was about new technologies and fashion tech and that sort of thing. So maybe we should start there. What has been the vibe in Berlin compared to Florence?
Well, so first of all, I've realized how huge of a city Berlin is.
Yeah.
Compared to Florence and Pitti, which basically is the trade fair at Fortezza da Basso, and you could just walk around in the city. There's been a lot of like going around in buses all over Berlin, stuck in traffic, going to the next place and another. So the vibe is much harder to like sense, but going to all these events and presentations and meeting with the brands, um, it feels like they're really trying to create something new and like looking forward. What does fashion need? What does Berlin need from fashion? And so there's very much forward thinking, mentioning these topics as technology, sustainability, very important, of course. So they're really working hard, the German Fashion Council, on reinventing the Berlin Fashion Week, but also the Fashion Week format in general. What is the purpose of it, you know?
I want to get into some of the the findings and specifically some of the topics around technology that you have experienced. But I I can't hold myself. I want to talk about this protest that happened just the other day. It's been written all over the fashion press. There was some kind of fake fashion show supposed to look like it was Adidas doing a fashion show, but it actually was some kind of activists taking over, talking about how raising awareness around the fashion production around the world. You were there, right? What was this?
Yes. So this was one of the first shows during the week. It was called "The Contradiction of Fashion," and no one really knew what it was and what to expect because it was announced like very last minute. So we went to this place in central Berlin, and when we got there, the whole place was embellished with Adidas logos turned upside down. So you were thinking, oh, nice. Maybe Adidas is doing something, like we're in Berlin, Germany, like their
Mm.
home country. Maybe they're here to support the fashion week and the fashion industry in some sense. Exciting. So we go in, take a seat. Then there's this guy who comes in and presents himself as the creative director of Adidas, and starts to talk about what they are going to do, and that this is the first day of their future, and like how they're treating, or how they have been treating their migrant workers, and that this will now change, and this show is very much the beginning of it. He also announced that they had a new co-CEO that now was taking over in the company. Presented her, an Asian woman, which apparently would have been working in their manufacturing plants in Asia, and now she was becoming co-CEO of the company.
Was it obvious during when this happened that this was a prank of sorts or a protest, or were people kind of fooled by it? Did you actually think that this was Adidas people working?
Um, in the beginning, you got this feeling like this doesn't feel right,
Yeah.
but if they say that it is like this, so why shouldn't I believe it? But the more the time went, it became for me very apparent that okay, this is a spoof. This is like has nothing to do with Adidas, and this will like things will go down when shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
But talking to some colleagues after the show, they felt that they were not aware that this was fake. It took them some time to actually realize, because the models that were walking in the catwalk were like in these poorly done, upcycled Adidas clothing, very distressed. They were like beaten up, had some sort of blood in their faces, couldn't walk properly, just to like enhance the effect of like the poor working conditions the
Hmm.
workers have. So like the brand doing that, of course, it's not going to happen in any sense. And like they made a lot of references to their collaborations with like Kanye West, GC, Pharrell, and like said that they were co-creators of this collection and these kind sort of things. So
Yeah.
it really didn't make sense at all. But apparently a lot of people had the idea of the show being real. So, and as you said when presenting it, it really have stirred up some emotions, obviously. And Adidas have condemned the whole thing. And
Yeah,
yeah.
well, obviously they went out and confirmed that this was not their doing. They were not behind this protest, and they also, in a statement at FashionNetwork.com, they said that, quote, "We reject the allegations. Adidas is committed to fair labor practices, fair wages, and safe working conditions."
Mm.
You being there, did you get a sense? Did this land well? Did this make people think? Do you think this was a successful PR stunt by this group who's behind it?
Mm, no, I don't think so. Like the show in itself was very uncomforting,
Mm,
so it made you think like, yeah, no, of course, it's like the working conditions in Asia and within fashion is obviously not good.
mm.
But come on, what else is new? Like, so, but like their main goal of the show, like what are we going to do next, and like what is their solution? You can't just like just highlight a problem. You not need to come up with an idea, a way forward. Um, so I don't know. What do you think? Do you guys think that this is like a good way of doing a
You
thing
know,
like
it's
this?
it's on the Scandinavian Mind podcast now, so they obviously they achieved. You know, it's gonna reach
Yeah.
the masses now. But I thought it was interesting that the quote from that the Adidas executive said, because they said something of like they were kind of holding it back. They were like, "We usually pay above the the pay grade in that
Yeah,
country," so they didn't even
yeah,
like fully shut it down. They were like, "We usually pay above it." And also, it's interesting to see, you know, Adidas, for me at least, in my kind of the social media bubble that I'm in, they've been through scrutiny the last like 6 months, you know, with Kanye West before they like decided to drop him, and then during the World Cup in Qatar, they were a big sponsor of that. People are saying like all these footballs, the people that are making that they make, you know, they make like I don't know how little money it was an hour. So I thought it would be interesting to see if they brought that up, because I know they've been kind of been scrutinized for the last half year.
Yeah. So this guy who presented himself as the creative director of Adidas, he announced in his opening speech that, yeah, so you guys, you know, we at Adidas have been through a tough year, but with as the things you're mentioning, like with
Hmm.
GC and the World Cup, so this is like the first day of our new future, and like to reinvent ourselves. So yeah, they very much address those topics.
yeah. I think it's from a macro level. It feels reasonable that these kinds of protests are coming out right now. I mean, there were reports at the beginning of the year where companies like Inditex that does Zara and H&M and I think even Lidl was scrutinized for their how they pay their contractors or their factories in Bangladesh. Obviously, I mean, there's a lot happening on the supply chain front, raising energy prices and so forth, and we see prices of garments are raising right now, putting pressure on the people, or putting even more pressure on the people that are making them. So I'm in a way I'm not kind of surprised that this is happening right now. What will be interesting to see, I think, from an organizational perspective, if I would be Berlin Fashion Week, I would be very concerned about having something come on kind of as an official event on the schedule, have all the press be there, have it be like a one of the fashion events, and then it turns out it's kind of a spoof. It's a protest. um, I think that could definitely. I'm sure they are scratching their heads right now, sweating profusely about how to secure a fashion week for the participating brands. Because if I were a participating brand to a fashion week, and I if they're not if they don't have their schedule in order, that's a big problem, I think.
Definitely. they're really trying to build something here, and I'm not sure if this helps really.
No, no.
Like all the bigger German brands coming from Germany is leaving for Paris and showing elsewhere. So they really like trying to build up this German fashion week thing again. So no, as you said, like I don't think this will help in that sense.
So let's move on and talk about some of the sort of tech elements that were happening during Berlin. As we said, a lot of communication prior to the event has been about different tech conferences. So, at a varying degree, this is something that actually has been part of the agenda. I know there was one official conference that they had to cancel or minimize, the Fashion Tech conference, but there were other things that actually were executed. You went to one by a German company called Universe, a SaaS tool for the fashion industry. They had their own conference. What can you say about what you learned there?
Yeah, so they had a quite full schedule during this day. Obviously, I didn't attend the whole day
No,
because since it's during Fashion Week, there's a lot of events going on, and you, yeah, attend different things. But they had topics such as what can you do with NFTs? What is Web3 and the metaverse? What is the role of emerging tech and how does it improve sustainability? Um, yeah, so very much talks around these topics.
right. Let's move on. There was another thing happening during Berlin, and I know you, Eric, has been looking into this and actually saw some of the live streams. This was related to upcycling and using VR and AR to help independent designers on this front.
So yeah, it was. You can kind of imagine my eyes popping up, trying to find something to talk about, and then I see upcycling and I see digital fashion in the same like sentence, and I'm like,
Yeah.
perfect. This is Skin in Mind podcast. So basically, Studio 183, which is a store in Berlin, a retail store, physical store, they held like a 2 day conference where they invited a lot of like digital fashion designers and experts to kind of talk about and have panel talks about how do we upcycle more, especially in digital age. And I thought it was interesting. They had one example that was kind of hands on. They showed it in the live stream. They have developed a kind of smart mirror app, an AR mirror that they called it.
Hmm.
So let's say you pick out 4 pieces of clothing in your wardrobe that you hate. You don't use them anymore. They've just been lying there. You don't know what to do with them. You lay them flat on the floor. You took a picture with your iPad or iPhone with their app, and they said, please try to have different textures and different patterns and stuff on these 4, so it's not just 4 white tees. You can choose between different templates or silhouettes. So it could be a jacket, it was like some kind of a college jacket, like a letterman jacket. They were like jeans in different sizes, and then you merge them together in this app, and then you could, from this template, from this silhouette you chose, these 4 of your own already pre-loved garments merged up through AI into this new garment. You could try it out with the smart mirror, in the smart mirror on yourself. So maybe like the sleeve was the pattern of that shirt you never wore, or like the left sleeve was like from the jeans you never wore again. And then when you had this, you could like press a button, like a mix button, like remix, remix, remix until you liked it. It would just, the AI stuff would just create these garments. And then you could go download this 3D print or 3D model, and you could go to like a small, they collaborated with Berlin, like a fashion university in Berlin, and then someone could make this piece for you, a physical one.
Wow.
So it's basically, like I said, it's upcycling in a digital age. I thought it was cool.
Well, that's a really fascinating proposition. It reminds me, I have a friend who is really good. She's cataloging every garment that she has in her wardrobe. So she has an album on her phone with all the garment that she owns, and she's into kind of designer stuff. So she only has the good stuff. And before she goes into the closet, she kind of surfs around in her own little, almost like an own little e-commerce store, trying to mix and match different things, and then she goes into the closet to get dressed. Maybe I'm oversimplifying, but I've actually seen the album. I was very impressed by how she cataloged her belongings. I definitely don't do that. But
Cool.
this is a problem. We've talked about it before. That goes back to the issue of we're only wearing our clothes, on average. Is it 7 times? Is the last number? I've heard 3 times. It's different numbers coming out. So this is obviously a huge issue, and this takes it a step further, meaning you take the clothes that you have and you let the AI redesign them. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. In seconds. So I
But
think it's cool.
do I get it correctly if this is like a tool for designers or just like normal people to like inspire them to DIY their garments?
Yeah, well, the purpose is, I guess it's kind of a gimmick right now. I just thought
Yeah.
like the idea is pretty cool. Let's say H&M or like a big fast fashion brand use this. So like, hey, you own old H&M clothes, put this on your app. We can design a whole new one, and then you can bring it in, and someone can sew a new one. I don't know how that would work logistically, but I thought it was cool. Or perhaps you can just use it perhaps as a virtual cloth. You can have it in an AR filter for Instagram. Like, hey, look at this, like a bit more fun to make use of your old clothes.
Hmm.
And like you said, the hard part would be to then actually make those 4 old garments into a new garment. That's easier said than done, I guess.
Well, we're going to get back to this topic of AI and how it affects our industries in a later episode. There's so much happening on the AI front, and it feels like the topic of the year.
Hmm.
We're going to have to wrap it up soon. I want to bring the conversation back to Florence, Italy. There is a report on scandinavianmind.com that, Oliver, you have written about sort of the Nordic brands making a mark on the scene there. Perhaps I just want to mention a few of these before we round up. What were some of your favorites from the Nordic brands that exhibited and did events?
So there were quite a lot, and the Scandinavian brands I think is particularly good in general. They're actually like trying to do maybe not something innovative in terms of technology and these kind of things, but they're actually interesting to see at Pitti. But for
Yeah,
example, Rolf Ekeroth with his collection together with the Finnish company Fiskars is very interesting. It's described in the report what he's been doing. This collaboration comes out of the scissors and, in a sense, inviting the wearer to like DIY not DIY the garment, but in a sense repurpose it by cutting out like pieces of fabric from the garment to create a sort of new garment from it. It was very
mm.
interesting and it looks really good as well. So,
Well, it
which
looked
is great.
amazing. The photos, the imagery was amazing. And Rolf
Yeah,
is a favorite of ours. We've written about him several times before. He's a great creative.
but it was also other people. Fredrik Berner Kiel from Copenhagen, which
Mm.
is a quite young designer, very up and coming, and really found his design path forward by creating these, in a sense, luxurious garments and combining it with functional clothing and doing tailoring in functional materials and having a very distinct design language. So he's very nice. One I'd like to mention is the company Blast from Norway, an outerwear
Yeah.
company who produces very cool, outerwear garments, highly technical, but also very fashionable and very nice design. But since they're from the like very from the coast of Norway, having like closeness to the sea, being like beneath the mountains, it's very much like born out of their climate and like meeting the needs, being in that area. So very much combining form and function to meet the standards of today.
Good stuff. Well, Oliver, it's been great having you on the ground reporting from some of these events. You can read your report from Florence. It's up this week on ScandinavianMind.com. There will be more reporting from Berlin. You'll still be there today attending the events and the shows. This has been the Scandinavian Mind podcast. Don't forget to sign up to our newsletter. Visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletter not to miss out on any of these events. Also, of course, we have to plug our upcoming talks at SIF. So during Copenhagen Fashion Week, we have the talk stage at SIF, the Copenhagen International Fashion Fairs for 3 days. We are hosting 3 tracks of retail tech talks, beauty innovation talks, and transformation talks about some of the most important changes and developments in the fashion and beauty industry. So don't miss out. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. And Oliver, enjoy Berlin.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.